Good morning, everybody. I'm Captain Zurich. We are at Gladiators' occasional Saturday rules readings of the sport that I call full contact medieval armored combat with steel weapons. We're still working on the acronym. Some people call it Buhurt, and we are going to be doing today the rules of the international organization known as Buhurt International, which holds one of the two world championships that the United States teams participate in. We're going to be doing the rules of dueling.
Here in New York City, we do use some of our own variants of these rules because of the unique conditions here in New York and the unique conditions of the places in which we fight and the purposes for which we fight. By which I mean, is it an exhibition, is it a practice, or is it a tournament? Are we using padded gear, or are we using full steel?
Now, Buhurt has separated their rules into rules, regulations, and policies into different categories. There are policies, which are basically how we do things here. There are rules, which involve like where you're allowed to hit and what moves you're allowed to use. And then there are regulations, which has to do with like what type of armor you're supposed to wear. So there is just one policy that I think it's important to read first and get out of the way. Then we'll start with the rules of the duels. Okay, I have a few things up here that I may be using to refresh myself or to reference during part of the rules. Policies. All right, many people have questions about this, so we're getting this out of the way. This is the tournament eligibility and gender category policy for Buhurt International. Tournament gender categories. Recognized gender categories. Buhurt International recognizes 3 gender categories for duels: outrance, or that's what they call pro fight, and Buhurt, group fight, or melees. Competitors are required to choose and compete in a single gender category for an entire event. Each category will be ranked separately. Eligibility for men's tournaments. All AMAB, assigned male at birth competitors, are eligible to compete regardless of gender identity, including cisgender males. FTM, female to male competitors, are also eligible to compete in this category. I should be numbered, that's 1.2. 1.3, eligibility for women's tournaments. All AFAB, assigned female at birth competitors, are eligible to compete regardless of gender identity, including cisgender women. 1.4, eligibility for women's open tournaments. All AFAB, assigned female at birth competitors, are eligible to compete regardless of gender identity, including cisgender women. 1.42, MTF, male to female competitors are eligible to compete if they have been living as a woman for 2 years or more. Categories and tournament. 1.5. 1.51, all tournaments must offer both men's and women's categories. 1.52, all tournaments may also allow duels, pro fights, or group fights in the women's open category if there are sufficient competitors willing to do so. If dividing the categories results in insufficient competitors for either the women's or the women's open category, only the women's category may be held. 1.53, event organizers must inform competitors at least 1 month from the start date of the event if the women's open category will be part of the event or not. And 1.6, awards. To issue awards for the regional, conference, and international stage, there must be a minimum number of 5 events per category in the season. Now, this being New York, any 2 people who want to fight with each other can fight with each other. Any number of people who want to fight in a melee may fight in a melee, because this is New York and we can do what we want here, so long as we're not asking them to, sponsor our event. All right, moving right along. Dual category rules. Okay, to give you an idea of how many changes there are, this is version 26.1. The framework of how the duels are going to be fought are in the regulations, but I'm going to get straight down to the nitty-gritty of how we fight. Counted strike, 1.1. Counted strike, legal strikes. During the fights of each category, the number of strikes by the blade of the weapon delivered into the legal strike zone of the opponent's body is counted. A counted strike is considered a strike if it was clear and deliberate and the opponent failed to counter it effectively with a defensive action. Prohibited strike zones, 1.2, illegal strikes. The following strike zones are illegal strikes and will not count for your score. Striking into these zones can result in penalties or disqualification. 1.2.1, back and front of the neck. Strikes to the back and the front of the neck are prohibited. Base of the skull. The base of the skull is considered a prohibited strike zone, specifically designed as the bottom third of the back of the helmet. In this case, it's pretty much where the bellowing of the skull stops. And so basically from here to here is the base of the skull if I were the referee watching the fight. Back of the knee. Strikes to the back of the knee are prohibited. No pressure is to be placed on the back of the knee by any means. Groin and crotch. Strikes to the groin and crotch are prohibited. Frankly, I don't know the difference between a groin and a crotch. Feet and ankles, 1.25. Strikes to the feet and ankles are prohibited. However, striking the foot. Okay, so strikes to the feet and the ankles are prohibited. However, striking the foot is not considered a prohibited strike if the competitor raises their foot while the strike is already occurring. There's a thing called target substitution that sometimes is played in games in which, say, for instance, the shin is an illegal target. Ha, you hit my shin, it's not, you didn't hit it, you know, it's not good. But then people started shins and feet for doing that, so it's a logical thing. Let's see. Unprotected body parts, 1.26. Any part of the opponent's body that has lost its self-protection is considered a prohibited strike zone. So yeah, while we should stop when the armor falls off, if it's on the other side of a person and I don't see it, and you're about to hit them, don't hit them in the part where they've lost their armor. Well, don't hit them at all. Call stop and point out the missing armor, but there's a rule against it. And regulations say what the penalties are for breaking these rules. Number 2, scoring rounds. 2.1, scoring. Now the scoring for Buhurt International is very different, is a little different than what it was for International Medieval Combat Federation and what we've been using here in New York. 2.11, sword and shield. Each strike to the legal strike zone of the opponent will score 2 points to the head or the torso, 1 point to the legs, the arms, or the hands. You actually get points for hitting the hands if you're under Buhurt International rules. Sword, so don't skimp on gauntlets. Sword and buckler. That is when you're fighting with these and a sword. Each strike to the legal strike zone of the opponent will score 1 point. And why, that'll be made clear when we describe what sword and buckler fights are. Polearm. That's basically any variant of a blade on a stick. Each strike to the legal strike zone of the opponent will score 1 point, excluding hands, 0 points if blow lands on hands. These things landing on hands is more dangerous than one of these things landing on a hand. But it doesn't say it's illegal, just no points. Offensive actions with the haft of the polearm do not score. So while in some organizations butt striking counts for a point, not in duels under BI. The full length of the cutting edge of the weapon is considered a blade. So that would be this full length here, the full length of the sword, and so forth. The grip must be held by 2 hands for the strike to be counted as a point. So I could punch you in the face like this, and it doesn't count as a point. Might knock you down though.
Would the knockdown then count as a point?
Wait for it. Longsword. Each strike, well, you know what? It does not say that knockdowns are counting for a point, so no, it does not. Longsword. Each strike to the legal strike zone of the opponent will score 2 points holding the grip with 2 hands. So you got to be holding the grip with 2 hands to score 2 points. In the head or the torso. It'll score 1 point on the arms, legs, or hands. 1 point holding the grip with 1 hand in all legal striking zones. So in Buhurt International, you can get a point for hitting it when you're holding it with only 1 hand, but you only get 1 point for it. Hold it with 2 hands, and you get 2 points if you hit the head or the torso. All right, and next, 2.2. Rounds, breakdowns. Sword and buckler. A match of sword and buckler consists of 3 rounds no longer than 1 minute. Each round is continued until one of the competitors has scored 5 points or the time limit has been reached. And again, those points, 1 point for any part of the legal target area. Maximum points per round is 5, or the total of counted strikes. So that means if one person scores 5 points, the round ends, and the other person gets whatever they got. There is no break between rounds. As soon as we count the 5 points, stop, start over. In the case of a draw, fight additional rounds until one competitor has 2 round victories. So one competitor's got to hit 5 before the other person hits 5 twice in order to win. And if they both hit 5 at the same time, it's a draw. Or if the time runs out and nobody hits 5, oh, I think we get to that. No, we don't get to that. Each round is continued until one of the competitors has scored 5 or time limit has been reached. There it is. So at the end of the round, if it's 3-2, the score is 3-2. Okay. If the score is 3-2, that means no one scored 5. That means max points is 5, 3 rounds longer, 1 each round. It doesn't actually say that someone has to score 5 points to win. It doesn't actually say that whoever gets the most points wins the round. Okay, we're going to be sending that off to the Rules Committee to find out the answer to that. Next, polearm, longsword, and sword and shield. Just so you can see, we're going to call this attorney shield because they didn't have irons, flat irons that are also called heaters back in the day that they built these. So we're just going to call this attorney shield. The fight consists of 2 rounds of no longer than 1 minute, a break of 30 seconds between rounds. If the match ends in a draw, an extra 30-second round is fought to determine the winner. The competitor with the highest score will win the round. Important, the organizers can change the length of the round, provided this decision is coordinated with the head organization and is registered in tournament regulations. 2.6, win conditions. The competitor who meets the criteria of what I'm about to describe will win the match. Here we go. Match winning criteria, 261. Sword and buckler. The competitor who wins 2 rounds first will win the match. Or the competitor is given a technical win, which will be covered in 2.7. For longsword, sword and shield, and polearm, the total score from both rounds, the total score from both rounds must have at least 2 points spread. So we're not counting rounds 1, we are counting total points. So yes, that is the 2 points is back on the table here. Technical win, 2.7. Technical win is awarded to one of the competitors in the following cases. 2.71. Withdrawal. If the competitor fails to report to the list upon the head referee's call, if the competitor fails to prepare the equipment within the designated time, if the competitor withdraws before the match is started. That's a technical win. The competitor who has failed to report to the list for any match may be penalized by a yellow card. In the case of a competitor cannot participate in the competition because of an injury or disqualification, their opponent is awarded a technical win. And then there's 2.72, injury. If a competitor cannot continue the match due to injury caused by an illegal strike, their opponent receives a penalty of double yellow cards and is banned from further participation in the tournament. The injured competitor is awarded a technical victory. The injured competitor is withdrawn from further matches in this category. And let's see, this is the last page of this chapter. How are we doing on time?
It's 12:45.
Okay, we got 5 minutes let me just do this. 2.73, penalties. If an opponent gets 2 yellow cards, warnings, or 1 red card, a disqualification. That sentence is incomplete. 2.74, armor failure. If the match is impeded due to equipment failure that is impossible to fix within the designated time frame of 1 minute. Oh, we're still under technical win. So it's a technical win if the opponent gets 2 yellow cards or 1 red. It's a technical win if if one fighter cannot fix their equipment failure within 1 minute. And all categories except for sword and buckler get a 10 to 0 score for a technical win. Buckler gets a 5 to 0 score. All right. Authorized fighting techniques. Let's try to blast through this. We may go just a little over. Permitted strikes. Buckler. Strikes are permitted with the flat side of the buckler, like so. Not the edge of the buckler, like so or like so. Polearm. Competitors are allowed to strike with a free hand, provided they have a weapon in the other hand. 3.13, strikes are permitted with the blade and the haft of the weapon, although we already determined that striking with the haft in any manner whatsoever does not count as a point. But that does. This does not, because that's not a striking surface. This, I'm going to call it. If that happens, I'll give it a point. If that happens, it's not. And if that, obviously it is. All right. Strike zone 3.2, strike zones. Strikes are allowed to any area not mentioned as prohibited strike zone, which we did earlier. 3.3, parry. Participants are allowed to parry the opponent's strikes. Techniques and moves with shields for buckler and sword and shield fights. Pushing the opponent with the shoulder or the flat of the shield. So pushing would be putting something against them and then pushing it. You know, like so. That's not a push. You gotta touch it and then push. All right. With a shield, it would look like this, and I'm even going to allow, actually, like so, and then push it like that. That's going to be perfectly cool, so long as you don't do that or that. Everybody saw that over here? Okay. Let's see. Pushing with the blade, shield, armed hand, or upper body above the waistline of the opponent with the flat or edge of the shield. So yes, so you can push just about anything with, you can use the flat of the shield to push, the edge or the flat, as I just demonstrated. Even though it's curved, not flat, but details. Using the shield to hook or cover the opponent's shield. It is a perfectly legit move to, for instance, take your shield and hook it, like so, or this is actually a move I rather like, is if someone has a shield with a point, sure, come on over here. Give me a second and I'll demonstrate. Just hold this on your arm. Watch this. Like that. That's perfectly fine. Bam. Yeah, question.
If I'm like holding the shield, can I like Can I like grab with the shield in, like this, like someone has a shield, can I like do that and like pull it down?
Let's see. Let me keep on reading and see if grabbing a person's shield with your hand is legal. If it's not in here, it's not legal. Okay? I'll get to that. Let's see what we got here. Using the shield to hook or cover the opponent's shield is fine. Push 3.5. Techniques and moves involving long sword and polearm. Pushing the opponent with your blade or arms, or pushing off the opponent's arms with your arms is perfectly legal. 3.6, weapon grabbing. Participants are allowed to grab their own weapon except the blade with their hands. So, I should hope so, otherwise how else am I going to swing it? But sorry, HEMA fans, half sorting is not legal in Buhurt International duels. Okay. All right. Pin to the list rail. Pinning an opponent to the list is not against the rules. However, if a competitor is pinned against the list rail, the Knight Marshal will call break fight and reset competitors to the center of the list. So it is perfectly legit to, if the person's just scoring point after point after point, to pin them against the rail so that you gotta stop and reset. Okay. And for those who don't know, the list fields are surrounded by wooden fences that are called the list, or list rail, as it were. Prohibited fighting techniques. These rules aim to ensure the safety, fairness, and adherence to a set of standards. 4.1, unlisted techniques. Any actions not listed in Section 3 of the rules are prohibited. What you described is not listed, therefore it's prohibited.
Okay, flat.
So, grabbing the edge of a shield by any hand, whether it's behind a shield or what, not allowed. And let me keep on reading. Thrusting actions. Any thrusting action with a weapon. Threats of a thrusting action, not allowed. With the thrust of a sword or a hafted weapon, like so. Now, we already went over. If the thumb and forefinger are on the far part of your hand from the butt of the weapon, that's pommeling. If your thumb and forefinger are close or on the closest part of your hand to it, that's a thrust, and that's illegal. Oh, and also pool cueing, either this way or this way, that also is going to count as a thrust, and that's not legal in melee or duel. Um, 4.3, offensive actions at the prohibited strike zones. Any offensive actions aimed at the prohibited strike zones. Just to clarify, in duels, it's okay to hit them in the side of the neck, just not the front or the back. The bit about striking vertically at the spine, not mentioned in the duels. Let's see. Striking to grounded or rising competitors. 4.4. Striking a grounded or rising competitor. You knock someone down, they try to get up, don't touch them. 4.5. Strikes to disarmed opponent. Strikes to an opponent who has lost their weapon. Now, we didn't see any points awarded here for for someone falling down or dropping a weapon, so no points, and you gotta let them pick it up. 4.6. Strikes with the head. Strikes to an opponent with your head is prohibited. No headbutts in Buhurt International duels. Strikes with legs. Strikes with feet, shin, and knees are prohibited. Now, they don't mention thighs, either in what's allowed or what's not allowed. So the default says, since they didn't mention it in what's allowed, we're not allowing strikes with the thighs either. Techniques and moves, 4.8. Back heels, wrestling throws, and clinching are prohibited. 4.9. Punches and elbow strikes. In buckler, reference 3.12 buckler, which I'm pretty sure is a typo because 3.11 buckler says strikes are permitted with the flat of the buckler, but not the edge. And likewise with the polearm, punches and elbow strikes, reference 3.13, which really should be 3.12. They're allowed to strike with a free hand, provided they have a weapon in the other hand. Now they said hand. They didn't say elbow. They forbid the leg, but they didn't say elbow. So, and they didn't mention the forearm either. They just said strikes. Okay, we got to follow that one up. All right. Next, almost done. Strikes with the pommel or cross guard of the, wait a minute, it says punches and elbow strikes, reference what it says about bucklers and polearms, and so they say strikes, so that must include elbows. So in buckler, punches and elbows are allowed in buckler, but when it says polearm, it says strike with a free hand, but it doesn't say free elbow.
I think it's in the prohibited section. That's the one exception to otherwise don't do this.
I'm not exactly sure what you just said.
Strikes, punches, elbows, and other arm strikes are in the prohibited section.
And what it says in the prohibited section is to reference what it said in the allowed section. That's exactly what it said. It says punches and elbow strikes. Reference what it says in the prohibited section. Yes, it is. Okay. And just 3 more of these and we'll be done. Strikes with the pommel or cross guard of the sword. Little, what do you call it, glossary here. That's a pommel, that's a cross guard. If you like speaking French, you can call it cuillons. And striking with those things are not allowed in duels. Grappling with hands and arms to the opponent's torso, head, and limbs are prohibited. Handholds of the opponent's sword, doesn't make a difference whether it's your opponent's handle or blade, is prohibited. Trapping opponent's weapons by shield, buckler, and or arm hands. So the old trick of getting your opponent's weapon caught like this, Buhurt International duels, not permitted. Can't do that. This, nope, can't do it. No, but when it was down there, it couldn't fall. But anyway, 4.12, strikes with the shields. Strikes delivered with the edge of the shield are prohibited. And authorized equipment, we'll just blow through this. We're almost done and no one else and no other instructors are here. This is the last page of the rules of dueling. We will do the regulations on another Saturday.
Okey-dokey.
Authorized equipment. These rules aim to ensure a high standard of authenticity, safety, and historical accuracy in equipment and conduct of the participants. 5.1, general requirements. 5.11, general and authentic compliance. All equipment must meet Buhurt International technical and authentic requirements. And I believe those details will be in regulations. Let's see, what else? Reference weapons requirements for all the rules. Reference weapons shield chart for all sizes and weights. I believe that's, that's in a completely different rule book within Buhurt International. 5.12, competitor eligibility. Competitors are not allowed to compete unless they have passed technical and authenticity checks. That's the armor inspections, and on Saturdays we're going to try to hold armor inspections of everybody before anybody fights. So please start putting on your armor as soon as you get there so that we can do that. 5.13, weapons requirements. Weapons must meet the technical requirement for permitted weapons. Low quality, dirty, rusty, or historically implausible weapons are not allowed. So everybody get yourself a scrunch pad and a can of WD-40 and clean up your weapons before you go to a tournament. Now, Crisco works just fine. If you're in a desperate pinch, literally spit does work as a de-ruster.
Wow.
Been there, done
Human
that.
body is amazing.
Let's see, footwear. Medieval shoes with low profile, that is non-lugged, studded, or spiked soles as referenced in authenticity standards. Now, there have been debates about Vibram sole waffle stompers, you know, like these kinds of soles on our game. Usually they're frowned upon because they didn't have them in the Middle Ages. But perfectly smooth soled leather shoes are literally skates on smooth wooden floors. I noticed that Vibram Company and other sole companies do make synthetic material pebbled soles that give you just a little bit of grip. And while I have seen one or two people say, "Oh, I'm willing to take that chance. Go to Mr. Dominelli's shoe repair shop and get that put on my historically authentic shoes before I go to a tournament."
If you came with boots that had, say, a zipper but were otherwise like practical for the sport, just ahistorical.
If we can see the zipper, then it's not historical.
Dang.
All right, next. Where were we? Shoes, weapons, footwear. Materials, modern 5.15. Modern adhesive tape, plastic ties, and other visible modern materials are not permitted. Zip ties are just stupid anyway. One ping, they go flying. And, you know, a packing tape, no. But I love what they describe next. Textile adhesive tape of neutral colors for kit repair is an exception. Duct tape is a textile. Okay, and yes, in certain tournaments, they did cover wooden swords with fabric and painted silver. They glued fabric to wooden swords and painted it silver, and that's the same thing as duct tape. But it's got to be a neutral color, so try to find like not shiny duct tape. Next, decorations, 5.16. Slogans and imagery on equipment should be historically plausible and not derogatory. So Excelsior is historically plausible. No taxation without representation. No modern equipment or decorations are allowed. So yeah, so don't put a door knocker on your shield or stuff. Equipment changes. 5.17. Participants are allowed to change elements of equipment, armor, or weapons during intervals due to breakage. And technical martial supervision is required for equipment changes. So if your gauntlet fails and you get a new gauntlet, you got to go over to the technical marshal as opposed to the field marshal and say, "Here's my new gauntlet." Yep.
Will we be getting this as a handout by any chance?
This is available by just search engineing Buhurt International and going to the rules pages.
Perfect.
And you will see then that they have really broken it down into sections. And you can just isolate every section. And they've covered a lot of potentialities. Because since 2012, and probably when the Americans joined, and probably even before that, they've been seeing, since we joined, they've seen a lot of things they never saw before. The kettle helms, for instance, the wrap shot to the back of the leg. You know, everybody wearing Vibram sole combat boots into the battle. They've seen all of it. So they made rules about all of it. Any last questions before we wrap this up? Okay. So next Saturday I can get down here, which will not be next Saturday because we're all going to be in Central Park. We'll go over regulations. Okay, thank you very much.